Hi there, my name is Brock, and today we are going to be restoring an old photograph. So we should have a fun time here. This can be especially useful if you have a photograph that's a little bit weathered, a little bit aged, and you want to, give it some new life or give it some more feeling. It's a great way to kind of relive the past and to take something that was meant for a different generation or a different time and bring it into our age, and heck, we're even going to add some color to it. So I'm going to teach you several tools in this video. Some of the tools we're going to be going over are the clone stamp tool. We're going to go over the paintbrush, the spot healing tool, and we might even go over the blur tool. So these can all be found on the left of your toolbar, on the left toolbar that is. They're already on there. So to start things out, we are going to click on the clone stamp tool. Now there it is right there. And what the clone stamp tool is it takes a piece of the existing image and it actually pastes it over an existing section. So how you do that is, if you're using a Mac like I am in this video, you're going to hold out on a certain section, and with that, you hold out and it gives you this icon you see here, and you select where you want the image pasted from. So you take your from, and then, so holding out, click, then when you let go of out, you can draw anywhere over the damaged part of the image. This is especially useful, like I said, for restoring old photographs where you have these random streaks of white cracks going through the image. So we're just going to take our selection just to the side of it within the same color zone, is what I like to say, and we are going to draw over these cracks in the image. As you can see, it creates a pretty good looking picture. I really enjoy this tool. It's pretty simple to use. Like I said, one of the main tricks with the clone stamp tool is you have to take from the image in the same color area, or you're going to get odd coloring. You can see like on the neck here where I had taken a sample of lighter skin and pasted it over an area that was supposed to be darker skin. And because I messed that up, I had to instead take from the opposite side of the crack where it looked a little bit better. Now let's focus on this big crack running through the picture. This is a good example of using multiple color zones. Obviously we can't just run a streak through the crack because you're going to be taking a sample from all across different areas. So let's focus on the left side first. Now on his lapel here, we're going to just take from underneath and we are going to slide up over this crack. Just like that. That's looking really nice. Now we're going to move on to his coat. Just like that. And I'm going to speed this up a little bit just because it gets pretty repetitive. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I really enjoy using Photoshop. It's a tool that I enjoy playing with. But definitely to watch someone do Photoshop is a lot less entertaining than actually doing it yourself. So I'm going to speed through this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments of this video, but everything I will be explaining before or after these sped up sections. So right now, like you can see, I'm just taking samples from similar color zones and I'm pasting over the cracks. If you ever see something reappear, like some of the crack, that means I used Control Z to undo an action because I probably pasted an area that probably shouldn't have been pasted over. This can sometimes happen. All right, now right here, this is a little bit interesting. You see this crack on the side of the lapel, and since the area directly underneath the crack is black meaning lapel and I need tan meaning lapel, that can be found on the opposite side. So we're going to open up the clone stamp option menu and we're going to click this reversal tool. Now what you can see in the test image that shows you where it's going to be, by flipping this, I can actually pull from a 180-degree flip. So boom, just like that, I was able to take from the opposite side of this little lapel here, and it just flipped it for me. So that can be a really useful way to utilize the clone tool. All right, now what I'm going to do for the background is I'm actually going to grow the size of this clone stamp tool by using the right bracket for grow, left bracket for making it smaller. Those are just the hotkeys for it. And since this is a wider area, I can do this without worrying too much about the consequences. Be careful around these edges, especially when you can see white around them, because by using the clone stamp tool, sometimes you can stamp something over the edge of what's supposed to be the photograph, and when that happens, it ends up looking pretty terrible. So you can see there I accidentally made a little mistake by bringing the shoulder up, but all right, there we go. Now we're gonna work on this crack on the hairline. Now this is, oh, so there you go. That's a good example of what happens when you accidentally stamp something over the edge. So I just Control Z, and now I'm going to get a little bit closer, a little more intricate, so that I can avoid that. So by taking this, I'm going to get rid of it, the crack on the left side and the right side. Now this hairline poses a little interesting difficulty. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reopen my stamp menu, and I'm going to change the angle of the stamp. Now you can see the image is rotating. That's just a preview of what the stamp is going to be taking from. So by clicking a different part of the hairline and then changing the angle, I can create a stamp of a different angle. So now I can take a stamp from down here and it's going to curve along with my image because I changed that angle. So there we go, and we were able to get rid of that. Now remember to take it back to 0 or you're always going to have odd clone stamp things happening, and I'm just going to get rid of the rest of that like there. There we go. So now I'm just going to again speed through this, and I'm going to clear up a lot of this image, a lot of the nitty-gritty little cracks. Now you can see here, there's this area of lighter next to the face that I'm actually, so this is a good example of fixing the image in its entirety. This isn't even necessarily a process of, you know, aging in a photograph, but I'm going to use some of the darker background and I'm going to define that edge a little bit more. So there, I really like how that looks. So yeah, so there's kind of the start of our image. So just a couple more cracks and things in here, and then we're actually going to start looking at the blur tool. Now before we get into the blur tool, I'll tell you a little bit about it. What it does is it basically just fades pixels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it over here on the side menu, and the point of blurring the pixels is to remove resolution, or to remove, you know, some of these really faint cracks that you can see. I just kind of want to fade those out. Now you wouldn't want to do this on a big scale. You would, like, imagine if you had a really big size and you did this over the face, the whole face would become blurry and it would be really obvious. But by using this tool in small areas like you can see here, and I'm being very careful about where I use it, I hate to lose definition that's not important, but because this background is kind of just abstract, there's nothing going on, you won't be able to tell the blurring. And I even use a little bit on the face, but again, watch out, because if there's any minute details, that's what the blur tool gets rid of. So be careful about where you use it, but this is another tool to have in your arsenal for when you want to use it. So I'm going to use the stamp there underneath the eye. Now you can see some dots every so often. And what I'm going to use the spot healing tool. Now this is a really awesome tool. This uses methods that I don't even quite understand, but basically what it does, it takes a sample of the image around your selection and it fills it to cover up any inconsistencies within that. So I'm going to go over minor defects, like little spots in the image, and I'm just going to click really quick. You can even draw with this tool. This can go wrong sometimes if, you know, you're too close to, say, this hairline up here or another place, and it might draw from an area you don't necessarily want healed from. So I've definitely done that, where you have like a little white spot on the face and you draw a big line over it and it draws hair on that area. So clearly that's not what you would want. So be careful, you know, be watching. You can always hit Control Z to undo something if you can tell that something went a little bit wrong. So now at this point, you have 3 tools in your arsenal for restoring photograph. You have the blur tool, you have the spot healing, you have the clone stamp tool, and what I'm doing right now, it's all sped up, and I was able to use all 3 of those to create something interesting. So from this point, I'm actually going to duplicate the background layer by just right-clicking on the background layer itself and hitting Duplicate Layer. Now I'm going to use the Quick Selection tool, and what this does is it allows you to capture areas and define their boundaries. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to colorize this jacket to start things out. So the first point of that is I need to tell the image, this is the area that I want to mess with. I do not want to accidentally get some of this color. So by holding out, you go from Add Selection, Add Quick Selection, to Remove Quick Selection. So as you're going, you know, you can grab the whole area and then hold out and zoom in and get rid of the minute details of where some of that selection maybe went over an edge. Because if you have areas like that, then your overall color addition is going to fade over to areas that shouldn't have that color. So here in the armpit's a good example of where I don't necessarily want this shadow to become colorized, so I'm very carefully going to draw the edges of this jacket and with that, create the outline. And again, with this armpit, here's another just, kind of black area that is unnecessary and doesn't need to be colorized. Now be careful of what area is shadow and wouldn't have color, and what area maybe should have color and is still jacket. So just be careful of that. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create a new layer by hitting this button on the bottom over here, and I'm going to pick a color that I want to use. So let's go a brown around here. I'm going to go up to the edit, and I'm going to pick overlay. I'm going to hit OK, and then after adjusting opacity, I'm going to change the layer setting to overlay, and then I'm going to adjust opacity. Now this allows the color to just sit on top of the image, so don't be scared when you very first paste that color and it completely overcomes the image, because that's what's going to happen. You're basically just throwing a color on that selection. So now I'm going to select out the color of this shirt, and I'm going to do the same basic thing. By holding out, I'm going to get rid of those edges or add edges. Just like that, a little bit there. This color is a little bit confusing. Again, pay attention to maybe what is skin and what wouldn't be skin. Now I'm going to create a new layer and select that layer. And my selection that I have here is already going to travel onto that layer that I'm selected on. So after selecting a color I want to use, going up to edit and hitting fill with the background or with the foreground color, then adjusting to overlay setting, and then adjusting the opacity, it's just perfectly going to add color to that selection. I know I make it sound easier than it is. It is not the easiest thing to do in Photoshop, but when used correctly, it can be so satisfying. The last thing to do is the face, and that is difficult to say the least. The especially difficult thing about doing the face is after selecting out the skin area, you also need to select out the teeth, the lips, maybe the eyebrows and the eyes, because again, you're basically just overlaying a solid color, and things that are white or things that are off of that color would not include that color. So without, I'm really gonna have to specify exactly what these edges are supposed to look like, and that can be tricky. And this one definitely, in my opinion, takes the longest, as opposed to maybe some of the clothing that you can do that happens so easily, because it's obvious. When you mess up, say you get some orange in the middle of an eye accidentally, or some, skin color in the middle of an eye, it's very, very apparent. So let's be careful to get those edges exactly right. And now that I pretty much have that selected, I'm going to create that new layer like we've done before. Edit, fill with the new skin color I've selected, and let's change the overlay. And we can adjust the opacity to fix this color. Opacity is the best tool for fading the layer a little bit or adding a little bit of translucence, and it can adjust the color kind of how you want to look at it. So there we go, that looks like a better skin tone. Now let's deselect that, and we are now going to move on to the lips. Again, this is really tricky because you don't want to accidentally get some of the skin, and you don't actually want to get some of the teeth, so let's carefully use our quick selection tool to cut out the lips from this image. Just like that. Look, I was having some difficulties on the bottom of the lip here, but have some persistence. The quick selection tool is the easiest method of selecting out, so bear with it. And there we go. Now we've added some color to that. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different for the eyes. We're going to stay on the same layer we created the lips with, and we're actually going to use the paintbrush tool and just draw them on. So after finding the color that you're looking for and clicking the paintbrush and correcting the size of it to whatever you're looking for, we're just going to draw where the color of the eyes would be. Just like that. Looks like I messed up a little bit there. I'm going to try one more time. And that's pretty much your finished image. So we kind of went over a lot of stuff, so I understand if you're a little bit overwhelmed. Again, if you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I tried not to make this video too long, but this is definitely a process, so take things one step at a time. So some of the tools we went over the clone stamp, we went over the paintbrush, we went over the spot healing brush, we went over the blur tool, and you can select the eyeball on some of these layers just to see each step of our work. And let's compare it with how things looked beforehand, and wow, look at that. We were able to get rid of a lot of those wrinkles, and things are looking pretty good. So thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something today.